Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. So today we're talking about how SharePoint can assist with gaining your ISO accreditation and obviously keeping hold of your ISO accreditation as well. So a little bit about myself. So my name's Steve Glasspool. I head up the consultancy team here at Valto. Our responsibility is to go out and work with many different organizations and clients to understand their requirements and put together our reports and recommendations as to how they can use the Microsoft 365 platform to improve their processes. And one large part of that is quality with a lot of organizations. A little while back, I was also a trained ISO 9001, which is quality lead auditor, and I performed a number of internal audits at a previous workplace. So I've always been pretty passionate about the quality side within SharePoint and Microsoft 365 as well, and a great advocate of using those tools to improve organizations and improve their quality moving forward. Just so you're aware, this session is going to be recorded and available on YouTube. So if for any reason you get you lose a session, you can catch up on it again. It will typically go out over the next sort of few days. We also do have a question and answer area. So within your Teams window, you'll have access to raise those questions. If you can raise them into place, and we'll tackle them at the end of the webinar. Hopefully we'll be able to get through all of them, but if not, there will be contact details so you can reach out to us, and we can obviously get in contact with yourself as well to talk things through further. In terms of our agenda today, so we'll talk a little bit about who Valto are for those of you who don't know us. We'll talk a little bit about what ISO is and what the ISO standards are. We'll talk through some of the SharePoint features for ISO, and then look at our SharePoint knowledge base. We'll jump into a couple of case studies, and we'll look at doing some demonstrations of actually our knowledge base and our controlled document system. And as mentioned earlier, we'll take some questions at the end. So a little bit about Valto. So we can see a little bit about us on the screen here. The key thing is we split into 5 different pillars. All of these pillars are tackling everything Microsoft. So we're fully embedded with Microsoft, and we're a full Microsoft partner. We split into 5 differing pillars. So we tackle modern workplace, which are the areas that we're talking about today. This is all about kind of build of SharePoint intranet, migration of document management systems, etc. We do also offer support. That support will be across all of our different pillars, but also standard IT support as well is offered, including licenses and looking after devices. We have our Microsoft 365 and Azure team. So this is, again, managing devices, looking at things around the security side of things, public cloud, etc. One of our largest teams is in the business application space. So business applications is all things development, all things Power Platform. It's anything from our model-driven apps, our Canvas applications, Power BI, Power Automate for automation, of course, and also Power Apps pages. So in terms of sharing content externally with your users. And then finally, we've got our data and AI side of the organization. This is one of our newest pillars, but it's been up and running for a while now. And this is where we, again, tackle all things Power BI, but also we're covering the AI side of Microsoft 365. So everything from Copilot, Copilot Studio, Copilot agents that have just been announced further at Ignite, and also looking at things such as Fabric for data warehousing that we can build upon as well. So that's Valto, but what about ISO? So hopefully a lot of you joining today probably do know of ISO already. But for those of you that don't, ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. And they essentially put together a number of different standards to help organizations kind of grow their company, to help organizations work in a structured way and improve their quality. As you can see here, there's actually 25,656 different ISO standards, all in various different shapes and sizes. But there are a lot of elements of ISO that are similar across the board. For example, every ISO standard is going to have some form of documentation related to it, and that documentation has to be managed in a safe way, essentially. And that'll be something we'll cover today. The way you achieve ISO is through auditing. So essentially an ISO auditor will be accredited to come to your company, and they will review your company against the standard. So they'll be looking that you can essentially tell them and show them that you're meeting that standard and how you're meeting that. Or potentially show them that you're on the journey to achieve that standard over time. You might be implementing a brand new system. It might not be fully enrolled yet or embedded yet at that time. There are a number of different types of audits. So you do have your certification audit, which is when you actually get your certificate, pending that you pass that audit. And there are a number of surveillance audits as well that take place that just ensure that you're going on that journey and you're keeping up to date with the new standards, with any updates to those standards, and you are continually improving. And there can be internal audits that your team may deliver themselves, ready to share that content with the ISO auditor also. It's all about improvement. It's all about continually improving in the organization. So it's not just something where you tick the box once and then you've got this accreditation forevermore. You are aiming to continuously improve your organization and continually work to make sure you're delivering quality services to your customers, moving forward. And this comes with a number of actions. So the actions that will come out of audits will either be your opportunities for improvement, it'll be your minor non-conformances, or it'll be your major non-conformances. Your non-conformances are things that you need to get fixed, you need to get them resolved. And we'll talk in a moment a little bit about how you go ahead with doing that and how you manage that. But also you've got opportunities for improvement, which are essentially ideas of how you can improve further. If you don't do them yet, it's not the end of the world. You can probably still get your ISO accreditation. However, they could develop into something that then does become a non-conformance moving forward. So it's always good to have a look at those opportunities for improvement. Now, these actions will come from audits, which are from external audits. That could be from a certifier, but it also could be from a supplier that you work with that may need to audit your company to also ensure they get their ISO accreditation. It may also be actions that you take internally from maybe a customer complaint, maybe from something you've identified within a meeting or through your own internal audits. So it's always worth keeping a log of those moving forward. So in terms of a couple of methodologies, two kind of key items that assist with ISO accreditation. The first one is the PDCA model. And as you can see, that refers to plan, do, check, act. So this is a cycle. We can see this is a continuous cycle in place here because it's a way that you are continually improving within the organization. So initially, you're going to plan to make some changes. This could be a brand new plan. It could be a brand new system you're rolling out, or it could be a plan to improve an existing system. So you're going to sit with your team and you're going to figure out what needs to happen, how that's going to happen before you move into the doing phase. When you move into the doing phase, this is actually taking action. This is the point when you're going to deliver upon your plan. Now, that might be a small test of your plan, or it might be implementing a full-scale solution, or it might be a study, depending on exactly what you've planned to do. Once you've done it, you then need to check it. Now, check isn't as simple as user acceptance testing of developing a system. Check is actually making sure it's fully embedded in the organization and you can verify its usage. So you may have tested the system, you may have rolled it out into the organization, but you want to give it a good 3 to 6 months to make sure it's been fully embedded and it's actually giving you the results that you planned right at the start of this cycle. When you check that system, you're going to analyze the results, you're going to learn lessons from there, and then you're going to act upon those lessons. That's where we move into the act stage, and we're going to take action based on what we've learned. And a lot of those actions that you take then feed back into planning for another round of the plan, do, check, act life cycle. So that continuous cycle for continually improving within the organization. We then also have CAPA. So CAPA stands for corrective action, preventative action. Before we can talk about corrections or preventions, we do also need to understand a root cause analysis of a problem. So I've included that here as well. So we know there's an issue in the organization. We know there's a non-conformance. And one such example might be that an engineer is used an outdated work instruction. So potentially they've put the wrong screws in the wrong order into a product that you're looking to sell. And that's going to cause issue down the line because it's either going to make that product unsafe. It might damage your reputation as an organization. It may mean that you need to call back lots of different products, rework products, and that's all going to cost the business more money than expected. So we need to understand if there is a problem, why did it occur? What was the reason for its occurrence? Now, the reason might well be as simple as the document was wrong, or it might well be there's a training need in the organization. It might well be that the systems aren't up to scratch, we need to identify what that is first before we can look to put a correction in place. We then move on to our corrective action, and this is the point when we put the correction in place. So we need to perform an action which is going to fix the issue right then and there. Okay. So using that same example, using an outdated work instruction, well, the quick correction is we go and print out the newest work instruction and we give it to all of our engineers and we make sure that the old ones are screwed up and thrown in the bin and they're working with the new one. That's your correction. So that's great. We've fixed the issue right then and there. But we also need to make sure that we don't have that issue crop up again. We can't have that issue turning up every 3 months. So that's where we put our preventative action into place. A preventative action is essentially exactly what it says. It's in place to prevent that from occurring again. So we fix the issue, but we want to make sure that never happens. And at this point is where we might take bigger steps. So in this scenario, we're choosing to implement a document management system. So we're not just going to rely upon folders or documents saved in emails or saved on your desktop. We're going to put a proper DMS solution into place. It may well be that people on the shop floor that don't have access to PCs, well, we actually need to put tablets down there. And now they can access the latest version rather than having a printed document. So that's the kind of approach that you take with Kappa. Now, both of these systems, we find people work within Excel and they store lots of actions and improvements in Excel documents, in Word documents, etc. Again, we'll talk through SharePoint, but they could be stored, within a more central portal. So as an example, I mentioned earlier that I was involved in ISO 9001, which is quality. And I've just extracted a clause from the 9001-2015 standard, just giving an idea of how things are broken down. So essentially, the ISO standard is split into multiple different clauses, and those clauses are then split further into sub-clauses and sub-sub-clauses, and so on. These are essentially the regulations and the rules that you need to follow within your organization to achieve this standard. So the one I've drawn out here is based on support. And this is all to make sure that we have the right resources, the right skill set in the business. We're communicating the resources, we're documenting the correct information to ensure the QMS functions correctly. One such clause within the support clause is documented information, specifically to make sure those documents are being managed. And that is then further broken down into the control of that control of that documentation. So anything which is documented as information, are we regularly updating it? Are we ensuring it's suitable for use? Are we ensuring people can find that document? They're going to use it in the correct way? That again is a further clause of ISO. So we need to deliver a system that's going to deliver these components. And we'll talk about our control document system a little bit later in this webinar. So let's touch on a little bit of SharePoint and a few kind of high-level items as to how SharePoint can be used for ISO. So initially, we've got communication. Across all ISO standards, you need to ensure that you're communicating changes within the business. This might be new processes, it might be new policy updates, new operating procedures. So all of this content needs to be communicated to people. And to be honest, email, can be used, but it's not going to be something that people are going to rely upon. Having a SharePoint intranet in place means everything is centralized. Linking that intranet up with Microsoft Teams, for example, or things like Viva Engage, just allows people to communicate and collaborate a lot further around those sorts of items. A lot of what we communicate may well be documents, and those documents need to be fully version controlled. So we need to have a single source of truth at all times. There's absolutely no point having a document stored in SharePoint, but then find that some of the organization use a version that was sent to them 3 months ago on email. Some people use a document that's stored or saved on their own machine, because then you've got issues with what document you're working from, and that can cause issues further down the line with your customers. So SharePoint acts as a single source of truth. We make sure that all documents are version controlled. That then allows us to go back and restore older versions. It also allows us to look at historic versions that might have been the version at a time, maybe when an incident took place, or maybe when a project was sold, and things may have been different at that time compared to what they are now. So having those older versions can help you out of a muddle a little bit later if needed. We also have the option to review and approve documents. So we can co-collaborate on documents. We can set permissions on documents to allow people to have edit rights to certain documents, but only read access to others. But we can also push those documents through an approval process. When we push a document through an approval process, what we do is give users in the organization the option to actually approve or reject that document. And we can make sure potentially that document isn't made available to other users until it's got through the necessary approvals. So this might be something as a compliance officer or as a head of department that you're going to be responsible for to ensure that your team works from the latest documents and they're not just making updates to documents and working in a different way outside of what's expected. In a similar route to that, we also have the management of tasks. So we talked earlier about non-conformances. So a non-conformance is a task. There's actions that need to be taken. We need to do a root cause analysis. We need to do a correction. We need to do a prevention. We also later need to verify that's been fully embedded. We need to do the plan, do, check, act for those corrections and those preventions. So all of those equate to tasks. All of those tasks can actually be stored within SharePoint. You can automate those tasks. You can send notifications for tasks that are overdue. You can also use other tools within Microsoft 365, such as your To-Do, your Teams, your Planner, etc. Knowledge is another key piece. So how do we actually work within an organization? Now, a lot of that might be stored in those documents, but you might also have other mediums of sharing this information. Mediums such as a SharePoint page with imagery and diagrams. You might even go a step further and have video recordings, of your compliance officer or your health and safety officer talking through and demonstrating ways of using certain equipment. All of that content can be stored within SharePoint as an intranet in a central location, so that anybody who works in your organization or even is new to your organization can find that information. We talked about audits. Obviously, audits have records. Those records might be documented, or those records might be in terms of list items and actions. So we need to make sure all of those audits and records are being held within a central system. Once again, we might have documents which are within Excel. For example, we see a lot of organizations that have their risk assessments in an Excel document, but better yet, they could transfer them into a SharePoint list, and then we could work from that list and have automated review of every single risk within the organization, rather than relying on documented information. And all of that can be improved upon with things such as Power Automate to notify me every 6 months to re-review my risks. So a couple of case studies that we've got into place here. So we did do a control document system for a construction service. They actually had 4,000 global quality documents, which were all very sporadically saved in multiple different locations, which meant people didn't really know what the right version of the document was to work from. It also meant there was no evidence that people were using the correct document or sending the correct document to their customers, because someone in Department A might work from a different location to Department B. That then meant there was duplicates in place as well. There was duplicate documents in terms of having documents saved in their email, having documents saved on their machine, having documents saved in multiple locations on the file server. And that again led to the wrong documents being used by different customers, different projects, which in turn cost more money further down the line. So what we delivered was our control document solution, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this webinar. But essentially, we rolled out that single source of truth into the organization. We ensured that all policy documents and all procedural documents were uploaded to the relevant area within the control document site. They were all tagged accordingly with metadata, so they were all searchable. We ensured that people who had edit rights could edit those documents, but they would only go live if they went through approval. And we ensured that they were reviewed frequently. So then we had a single source of truth in a single place for everyone within the organization to access, and there was never a question of where do we find these documents. They were always going to be in that single location. As a separate case study to share, this one more focused on the knowledge side of the organization. We worked with a university that managed projects across all the various different facilities. The issue is everyone ran their projects in a slightly different way, and everyone thought that the project team worked in a slightly different way. which then meant there was no central knowledge share that was being worked from. That meant the project team found themselves getting dragged into projects too late and having to rework some of those projects. It meant that the project team had lots of questions getting asked of them, and they wanted to have a central place where they could share that information with everyone across the university. Another key area was having no traceability of what projects were in flight. So certain different functions and departments would kick off their own projects and would forget to loop in the project team and have a project manager in place. So through our delivery of our knowledge-based system, which is something else that we'll demonstrate in a moment, they then created a one-stop shop for all delivery knowledge. This was inclusive of documents, it was inclusive of FAQs, diagrams, videos, etc., so that employees could be educated on the way that projects actually ran to improve projects moving forward. Excuse me. Okay, so we're now going to look at a demonstration. So we're going to tackle our control document system, and we're going to tackle our knowledge base system. So if I just bring up my other screen. Okay, and now we should be seeing our Holler intranet in place. So our Holler intranet is a service that we deliver out to various different organizations, and we do a lot of intranet deliveries. And the key thing with our Holler intranet is that it's a build of SharePoint that then becomes a central location for all of your content to be accessed. So we talked earlier that communication is really critical, and that's what an intranet is going to provide you. So this could well be links and signposts to specific tools which are held internally or externally. It could be news, it could be events, etc. So we've got a lot of content into place here that can be used. Now we do find within our intranets that we will then roll out multiple different departmental sites. And when we roll out our department sites, we may specifically have an area for compliance. So we find compliance, quality, health and safety, etc. always warrant having an area within the intranet, which is their kind of shop window to share content with the rest of the organization. So this is where, again, they can signpost to various different documents, they can embed documents, events and news, and it gives them a space that they can work within to share the content with other people that aren't within their department. Now, as part of each of these organizational areas, there might be certain tools and services that are built within SharePoint. One such tool we're going to look at initially is going to be the control documents environment within compliance. So if I open up our control documents environment, what I'll first showcase is this is within its own site collection. So there is a landing page that users can come onto and they can make their way to various different views of documents. These links may differ depending on your organization and depending on who you are as a user accessing the site, because it might well be that I'm an editor that needs to come in and administrate documents versus a reader that just comes in to find the latest version and see what's been updated. The key area within our control document system is actually the document library itself. So if I click into our document library, we can see an indication of some of the documents here. Now, this document library is a little bit more advanced than just a standard out-of-the-box document library you get within SharePoint. The reason being is that we have a number of items of metadata that are in place. So we can see all these various columns that contain metadata. The metadata are each of these individual tags that we've got in place. And this allows us to do things such as filter the documents. So we can filter that from A to Z. Or it allows us to, sort the documents or filter the documents. Now, if I select IT, for example, I can see my IT documents that are in place. So we work with organizations to understand their metadata and their tags that are needed, because every organization is slightly different in how they want to search and filter their documents. But we also have some metadata, which is critical for our actual system to function. So if we look to these columns here, we've got our review date, our approval date, our review period, our reviewer, and our approver that's in place. Now, this is all part of the approval lifecycle of documents. For example, if I send a document for approval, it'll be this person in this column that will approve the document. Once they approve the document, I'll get given an approval date, which will be the point in time when they select that button. I'll then get a review date set based on the review period. So it may well be 12 months from today that review date will be. And when we get close to that review date, the reviewer will get an email. So in this case, Jenny will get emailed and get told that that document is due for review. They would review that document, they would make updates, they would send it to the approver, and that whole life cycle would start again. So that single source of truth for this one document will have many different versions that go through that life cycle. Now, we work with organizations to add various different bits of metadata into place. So we can see that we can simply add a number of different types of fields into place here to capture information related to that document. It could be things such as ISO accreditations that it relates to, it could be the language of the document, etc. What we'll also see within this library are that the documents are in Word format. The reason they're in Word format is that actually you can co-author documents within SharePoint. So you can have many different people access the same document, pending they've got permissions, to make changes to that document. That's really handy. I mean, we use it ourselves in our organization, that if we're working on our staff handbook, for example, some of the management team might edit pages 1 and 2, whilst other members are editing pages 5 and 6, for example. We don't have to wait for the other person to finish. A lot of organizations will save their documents as PDF because they don't want people to edit those documents. But in this scenario, we'll use permissions to manage who has access to those documents. The way that we use permissions are linked to our versions. And what we mean by that is that we'll have documents that are in a draft status or those that are in an approved status. And we'll say that editors can see draft versions, but readers can only see approved versions, which are in this library. Okay. So if we look at one of these documents, let's open up this one here and have a look at the version history. We will see that we have a number of different versions on this document. Of course, this is a test library, so we've got lots and lots of different versions into place. Our version numbers are split into minor versions and major versions. So our minor versions are anything which has a point and then a number greater than 0, so 0.1, 0.2, they're minor versions, 4.1, 5.1, 5.2, etc. They're all minor versions. So they're the documents that will only be seen by people that have edit access to those documents. We then have our major versions. Our major versions are anything which is 0.0, so 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and so on. They're our major versions, and they're the versions that are going to be available to everyone. And they're the versions that we're expecting people to work from this central location. So when a document starts its life in this library, we can simply go and upload a document into place, or we can create a document from this menu, or we can drag and drop a document across. I won't pop a document into place here, but I'll talk through the process just in the interest of timings. But when we have a document in place, what we can do is we can see a document starting its life as version 0.1. And this document can continue to be modified with the metadata being changed, or with the actual document's content being changed, and it will keep up issuing the versions 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc. At this point in time, that document does not exist within the library for anyone who has read access. It's only available to people with edit access. If I'm happy with that document, I'll send that document for approval, and that document will go to the relevant person that's set as the approver. So in this case, for the complaints policy, it's going to go to Joe Bloggs to approve that document. If that document is approved, in fact we're at version 6.8, that would become version 7.0. If it's rejected, it would remain at version 6.8. When a document is approved, what it then means is that is the latest version that is available for the end users to be able to read and be able to review. So this document version at 6.8, Editors can see version 6.8 and can modify that document, but anyone who has reading access will only be able to see the current published major version, which is version 6.0. So that again means I don't have to have a duplicate version of the document. I don't have to have the document saved elsewhere. I can be working on this document and know that everyone else still has access to the latest version. I can send that link to someone in Teams or in emails and know that anyone that clicks that link will always go to this latest version. And if I update this to version 7.0, that link will then go to version 7.0. I don't have to send that link out again. So it's really critical to keep that single source of truth into place within here. What we also have to extend this process a little further is we do actually build in tracker groups. This is very handy for ISO because this is all part of the communication side of things. So each of these tracker groups can be assigned to documents, and you can mark a document as needing a tracker, yes or no. What a tracker does is actually sends an alert when a document is published to all your users within these groups and asks that they accept the document and they read the document. I always describe this a little bit like terms and conditions. We don't actually have evidence and proof that they've read the document fully, but we have their say-so. So we have evidence that they've marked it as read, and therefore organizations can use that knowledge in slightly different ways, however they wish to use it themselves. Okay. Now, each of these documents can have a tracked group aligned to it, and we can create many different tracked groups. And these tracked groups will actually link with your security groups that you've got set up already, or new security groups that you would set up for this system. And that would actually be using the Entra AD ID. So if I've got a document marked as all staff, the automation is going to look at this ID of this security group, and it's going to send an email to every user within there and give them a task to read the document. And we can see here that we've got all of that data being picked up of every user, the documents they've read, the version of the document they've read, when they've read it, as well as documents they've not read. Users can also read documents from within this view, so they can do it from within email, or they could do it from within this view as well. So if I look at my documents here, we will see the ability to mark that document as read. So I've got these options into place. So again, we'll work with organizations to determine their metadata, we'll determine their different tracker groups. We can also go through and determine the different kind of approval cycles they need to use. So just touching on approval, we can see in this example here, we've got a singular approver for every document, but we could have approvals that go to groups of individual, again, using security groups. We could have approvers going to multiple individuals. And if we take that approach, we just need to determine the correct way that we want the approval to process. That could either be firstly in serial or parallel. So does it go one by one? If Joe approves, then Jenny gets the email. If Joe rejects, Jenny doesn't know about it. Or does it go in parallel, where it goes to Joe and Jenny at the same time? And if it goes to both at the same time, do we want to take the response of both of them, so they both must approve, or do we want to have the response of the first person that clicks the button? So lots of different options available. And when we deploy these systems, we scope these systems out with every organization to determine the best course of action for the way that they approve their documents and the way they want to work with their documents moving forward. We're now going to take a look at a knowledge base. So if we go into the knowledge base here, so this is now looking at a way of keeping knowledge within SharePoint. So outside of the documented knowledge, but things that could be within your intranet, could be videos, etc. The way our knowledge base works is a little bit like a wiki, a bit like Wikipedia, where we'll have various different articles and different subjects, and those subjects will have their different articles and different articles will link to one another. So within here, I could go and create a new page. And if I wanted to create a new page, I can, and I can create one from one of the existing page templates that we have in place here. So our article page or our subject page. So as an organization, you can have many different page templates in here. Maybe you've got an image heavy page, a video page, etc. So that people create things using the relevant template moving forward, keeps everything in alignment. Those pages can then be created in this scenario as subjects and articles. So if I go into the sales and marketing site, this brings up our subject page, and this is using a specific template where we've got an executive summary, we've got information about who to contact, we've got documents, and we've got articles into place here. Now, what's great with a knowledge base is that these documents could actually be views of the controlled documents library. So this could show a certain set of documents based on the page that I'm looking at. So that leads me back to the controlled documents environment and into the documents library, where we can look at some views of the documents. So for example, if I open up our views panel here, and excuse that we've got loads of different test views, but I go and pick ISO 9001, we can see that's pre-filtered to all the documents that equal ISO 9001. Now this view could, if you wish to, be embedded within an ISO 9001 page like so, which then means you could give someone information about ISO 9001, you could have a video about it and tell them who to talk to, but also you could make sure they've got access to all the latest documents that relate to ISO 9001, and all the documents they click on will be the documents they're allowed to read at the latest version based on the controlled documents process that we discussed earlier today. Now within this site, we also show a number of different article pages, and all of these articles are related to the subject that we're looking at. So in this scenario, we're looking at the sales area, sales and marketing within the organization. So therefore, we've got various articles about how to deliver a sales demo, how do we create a new opportunity, a new lead, how do we use social media for marketing campaigns. So we've got further information in place here. If I was to click into the sales demo, we can now see that I've got a slightly different template. I've got an article template where I've got a lot more content and information embedded on the page. Remember, this could be embedded videos, multiple embedded videos if needed. And we've also got a number of different links to signpost to systems that might relate to here. So maybe it's a link to our CRM system, maybe it's a link to our demo environments. And we've also got further related articles. So I can come into here and say, great, I understand how to deliver a sales demo. I've delivered the demo, it went really well. I now need to create a new lead for that demo or a new opportunity for that demo. So I can come into place and then again, view further information in place here. So it gives you that ability to collate lots of knowledge, which is typically something when I work with organizations where they say we don't have a central place to go to hold everything about the organization and understand the way we work, how we work, make sure we all do things the same way, make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And this is what the knowledge base gives you, further empowered by using the controlled documents environment to link processes, procedures, and standards, regulations, etc. into place. Another area within the knowledge base which is useful is frequently asked questions. This is something we talked about earlier as regards to the university case study. And this was something which was really critical to them, is that they wanted a space that when someone sent them an email or gave them a phone call and asked a question, could they put the question somewhere so that they don't get asked that question again? So this is where the FAQ comes into place. And you see this on a lot of different websites that you might be browsing. Well, why not have an internal FAQ? And within here, we've got a number of different questions built into the page here. This is the page setup, so I can go and click on how do I log my expenses, and that's going to take me down to this heading, and I can read the answer. I can go back to the top, and I could, if I want to, look at how do I request toil, and again, I can read the answer and go back to the top. You can have FAQs in a slightly different style, so we do have styles in lists as well. And if we go into the list format, you can see that we've got questions looking like so. And this is being achieved through using a little bit of what's known as list view formatting, which is just a little bit of code applied to this list. Now, having these sites, having your knowledge base, having your controlled documents, The thing that you then want to start exploring further, which I don't unfortunately have a demo of, but would be looking at things like Copilot, looking at Copilot Studio, looking at chatbots, and rather than exploring the FAQ, actually be able to ask a question. How much holiday are we entitled to? How do I purchase holiday? How do I deliver a sales demo? And have that pull in information internally from all of that content that you've got in that central location and have that exposed via AI and via Copilot. So that's somewhere where we're aiming to get to, and that's what we're driving forward. And we're working with a number of clients at the moment to start turning their knowledge into more actionable insights through use of Copilot. As a final little show and tell in relation to the knowledge area as well, slightly different template we've got here, but you can start to turn knowledge into stuff which is a little bit more kind of e-learning in its nature. So for example, this document actually has an embedded video into place here. We've got the content in place, but also we've got a little quiz at the end. So we can pick, which is manual handling, what injury is the most common, etc. And I could answer that and we could have that data stored. So again, it's another step forward as to how we can start to communicate content. We can make sure people's read the content. We can check people's knowledge and check their understanding of the content. And we can share all of that with our auditor, and you're going to have a very happy auditor sat there ticking all the boxes and hopefully awarding you your ISO accreditation off the back of that. So I just want to jump back into our presentation. Hopefully that was all clear. But I would be remiss if I didn't jump in and show you a little bit about the costing side of things and what we've got into place. So the couple of systems I showed you there, we do have a couple of different packages when it comes to controlled documents and our knowledge base. All of these packages include a scoping session to make sure that we can configure those deployments for your organization's needs. So although let's say the controlled document system will have some metadata in place, there might be unique metadata that you need to capture within your organization. We'll deliver that solution based on with those configuration items, and we'll train your users on how to work within that system. And finally, we do offer a few hours of support within that package because we know what it's like to get that system fully embedded. There might just be a few extra questions, extra tweaks that are needed. So we put that into place to support your end users. Now, we do work with a lot of organizations that require a bespoke solution. And this is where we deliver our workshop process, which I'll touch upon in a moment. But we do find some users, some organizations, do look at the controlled document system and say, we like that, but we have lots of extra features and functionality that we need to embed within that system to meet our ISO accreditation. With that in mind, we'll look to scope that out with an organization, and it might well be that we look at the controlled document system as a baseline, but then we go through our estimations process and we advise specifically to your bespoke requirements what you need to build. We've built many different quality systems for organizations. I mean, the controlled document system and the knowledge base are some of our top sellers, but we have built a number of different quality systems from anything from risk assessment to case management to corrective action, preventative actions, etc. So we do a lot of bespoke builds as well. Just one thing of note, less so for this webinar, but more so if you're listening still on YouTube, these prices are correct at the time of this webinar recording. So if you do chat to us in maybe 6 months' time, they may have adjusted ever so slightly, but do reach out to us and we'll talk to you about what the new pricing model is, if there is one in place at that time. We then have our workshops. So our workshops is when we come into an organization and we want to fully understand where the organization wants to go, how they currently work, how they're currently using SharePoint, Office and Microsoft 365, if they are currently, and where they want to move forward to. And we'll produce a full report for them with recommendations and costing as to how they can get to where they need to get to. It could well be that that report is a phased report, so maybe they've got to produce a minimum viable product initially, or they want to produce an intranet and then maybe add extra modules on moving forward, so we can piece that together for them. We do a few various different workshop reports. The one we're focusing on here is our SharePoint workshop, so very much around intranets, product delivery, knowledge-based control documents, etc. We do also offer other workshops, which I don't have a slide for here, but we do offer them in the Power Platform space as well as the AI space for anything which is kind of pro code development or low code development as well. So if there is anything that's piqued your interest from a quality perspective that isn't necessarily a out of the box deployable solution that we offer, still do reach out to us, because we can talk you through options that you would have. And as I said, we've built many different quality solutions for organizations. So that's the little sales bit out of the way. And we just go through now to see if there are any questions at all. So let's just take a look at our Q&A session here. So we've got a question around the controlled documents register and tracker. Would there normally be one per company or one per department? And we've also got a similar question, which is whether I need multiple controlled document systems. So I'll tackle both of those together. So if I just bring the controlled document system up on our screen. So it's completely up to the organization how they want to kind of structure their controlled document systems. A lot of our organizations will go forward with a singular controlled documents area and a singular tracked group area. Reason being is a cost side of things and a budgetary side of things, because they'll use governance to control who has access to that library. And there'll be essentially some unwritten rules in the sense of, like, an IT user wouldn't modify a finance document, for example. If they did that, you would know who's modified it, when they've modified it, and you'd have all that data in place so you could go and have a word if you needed to. So a lot of organizations do go down that route. Some organizations take it a step further and they do want to keep things a little bit separate, with HR can only edit HR and finance can only edit finance. That's okay. That can be done using subfolders. So you can permission subfolders. Again, I wouldn't go crazy. You wouldn't want to have 50 different subfolders in here, but if you've got 3 or 4 different teams, then that's quite easy for your administrators to maintain. So you could have a HR folder and you could have a IT folder, for example. Within the views I showed earlier, you may remember us looking at the views here. Those views can be altered so you show documents in a flat structure outside of folders. So you could, for example, have an admin view that shows me my folders. And as a member of HR, I go to the HR folder and I edit my documents. But as a reader, I come in and I see everything still just listed outside of folders. So I save me clicking further into subfolders, and I have the option to sort and filter from the top here. So you do have that option available to you as well. Finally, yes, there absolutely is the option to deploy this to multiple different site collections. So we're in a singular site collection here called controlled documents. We have had other organizations that have deployed this to Department A, Department B, Department C. And we've had some organizations that have built slightly different approval processes for the different departments as well. So that's another area that can be looked at. Of course, that will be a slightly different cost because we're developing more solutions and deploying more solutions for you, but always happy to talk you through all of that if you're looking to proceed, and we can give you an indication of what the cost of one would be versus the cost of multiple, and there might be, you know, a form of deal that can be done around that as well. So do reach out, do ask us. We're always happy to have those conversations. Okay. Just check if we've got any other questions. Hopefully that answered that one okay. So yeah, we've got a question just around the controlled document system and whether it can work for multiple standards. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something quite common across all the ISO standards is that you do need to control your documents. For example, you'll have your quality management system and quality management policies for ISO 9001. But you'll also have statements around your environmental impact and environmental review for 14001. Now, all of those documents can still be stored within this same library. And you may remember earlier, we had this ISO dropdown, and this allowed us to set up different ISO standards related to a document. Some of these columns can be set to be multiple values. So we could actually edit that document if we wish to, and we could add multiple properties to that. So potentially we'll have a document that actually would appear for ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. So that is also an option that could be made available. So yeah, metadata is really key to make sure you can sort, filter, and store your documents in the correct way moving forward. Okay, let's just take a look to see if we've got any other questions in there. Doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming through. So I'll just pop this slide back on the screen. So final thing from me, other than thanking you all for joining me today, is that if you do wish to have any further demonstrations and emphasize free demonstration of this system and dive into it in more detail, then please do drop us a line. You can reach us on sales@valto.co.uk, or you can give us a call on the number that's within your screen there. Our team will be happy to walk you through these services and systems, understand what you're looking to gain from SharePoint Microsoft 365 moving forward, be it a bespoke solution, be it the deployment of controlled documents. As and when needed, our consultants will get looped into that call as well, so I may join some of you on future calls. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. We'll end the session here. You can catch up on this session again on YouTube in the coming days. Thanks very much. Take care all.